Hey YouTube, today we're going to stitch together a few videos on how to transplant some old plasma pinball displays. Picked this up on the cheap from Tron Guy. Thanks for the hookup here. He upgraded to LEDs, which is kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do here. But I think this was in his Cyclone or something, but it's the 4-panel one. So I have it running in test mode on my F14 Tomcat. I have an LED display in here, so I'm not going to use it on this game, but I'm going to salvage the top two alphanumerics and then put them on the individual boards so that I can keep my high speed and my Pinbot original. And then the player 3 display there is pretty good too, so I can keep any of my Williams 7-digit games like Black Knight or Space Shuttle going as well. And then Taxi also uses one of those. And then Pinbot and High Speed also use two just numeric ones. But the top two and the bottom left are good. If you're seeing any strobing, that's just an artifact of the camera. But that player 4 one's pretty burned out. So first thing to do is, before you go through the trouble of swapping these, and we'll do other videos on the bench too, but make darn sure that they work. This is kind of a tedious process. It'll take you a few hours and kind of be a little bit frustrating, especially if you don't know if they're good, go through all the work and then find out that they don't work at all. And one big thing to worry about on these is some of these glasses have nipples on the back that are very fragile and easy to break while you're trying to remove things, because these are double-sided taped on to their standoffs, or maybe double-sided taped onto an actual circuit board if it was the single ones. And if that glass nipple breaks, then you're pretty much done. But some of these do not have that glass nipple, so you kind of have you still need to be careful, but you don't have to be as careful. So we'll go through and kind of show the process of swapping over the alphanumeric and then that lower numeric one, so that they can hopefully keep some other games original. All right, we're on the bench with these displays now. This one managed to break free from its mounting tab, but I went through and my kind of spare pile and found some good ones to transplant onto. This one actually works fine, but it causes other displays to act up. This one is working okay, but it's kind of burned. You can tell that it's been replaced. This is obviously not the factory tape job. And then this one doesn't work because it has some missing legs on it. This one must have been dropped or hit at some point. So I think maybe the last one's worked, but not the first one. And if you're looking at these boards, because again, we're going to go from the quad display to the single displays. If you want to know the difference between just a numeric display and then an alphanumeric display, you'll notice that they have different size connectors on them. So the one that has the bigger one needs the extra data for the letters versus just the numbers. And then also you have to be aware of, if you're trying to transplant glass, this particular glass has no nipple, but if you were transplanting a glass that has a nipple, it needs to be off-centered to the right. And I actually have not seen an alphanumeric one with a nipple until this display. So I think this one does not have a nipple, but this one does. So I'm going to have to figure out if we can see the nipple on that one. Kind of see where that hole is. So it's somewhere about here. I'm going to have to take one of these glasses off and see if it's possible to drill a hole in the PCB for that nipple. So I don't think it'll hit any traces on the back, but I don't know if there's any traces running on the front, because this is a dual-sided PCB, so there are some traces that might be back there. So that might get a little interesting. But all of these factory displays are full taped on the backside, which makes it kind of crappy to get everything off. And then on the quad displays, they just have these little mounting tabs that have double-sided tape on them. So it's a lot easier to get these off of those plastic standoffs than it is to get them off of the circuit board that they're taped to. And this won't be too bad going from here to here, because if you pay attention to the size of the legs, so they're pretty short on the circuit board mounted side, but when they're on standoffs, they're pretty long. So if you're going from the quad to the single ones, you can actually just probably cut these off and you don't even need to desolder them onto here. But if you're going to go the other way, meaning you're going to take some single displays and go back to a quad one, your legs are not going to be nearly long enough. So I've outlined this in other videos, but what you should do is, if you're going to remove this display and replace it with this one, then you should resolder all of these legs while that display is attached, and then snip these as long as you can, and then desolder these as long as you can, and then you're going to attach the legs to the legs, and that'll kind of stretch you out so that you're long enough to go from a single display to a quad display. And again, you don't want to snip them first and then resolder them, because the legs are going to fall and tilt and move at all different angles. But I kind of outlined that when I was doing this with a set of System 6 displays. So we'll get these transferred over and see how that goes. All right, we're back and we have all three swapped over. You can tell the ones that have kind of lean on them were the ones with the nipple. So this one had the board that already had the large hole for the nipple. I did have to drill the hole into this one to fit this nipple. And when I drilled that hole, nothing was impacted on the back side. But on the front side, there was one single trace that was going pretty much dead center through that hole. So on the other side, I don't have a picture of it, but I just put a bodge wire kind of around the hole, and everything's tested and working. So those are good to go. Another thing that I wanted to mention, if you're trying to do this, on a lot of the factory displays, if we can kind of see the angle that the legs make, a lot of them are just the shortest absolute distance, which puts a lot of stress on those legs when they heat up and cool off between power up and power down. And then sometimes that leads to the legs breaking off right at the glass. So if you have long enough legs, I encourage you to kind of put a little bit of a curve or a bend in them. That way they have a little bit more strain relief. Also, when you're trying to put these on, if you've ever noticed some that were replaced in the past, the top edge of the glass should be pretty much flush with the top edge of the board. Don't go off of this little trim shield here, but go off of the actual glass itself and try to get it right along the top edge of that glass, because if you get that high or low, it might not display correctly in the window of your back glass. Another thing to be aware of, we have two different displays here. This, besides the alpha part of them, but the numeric one here is actually from an older game, from like a late System 7 or System 9 game. And it might be difficult to tell in the video, but these holes that they mount with are actually larger, and they're meant to go through, I think it's a number 6 screw that has a plastic spacer on it and a nut. But these holes are actually bigger than the later ones that they use on System 11, where these style actually mount with a plastic push tab. And if you are trying to put the bigger one onto a push tab one, these aren't going to snap in. This is actually going to fall off. And if you try to put this one on the post screw style, it's actually probably not going to be big enough. So you'd have to drill these out. But if you drill them out, you'll never be able to make the hole small enough to fit back on that snap post. So if you're dealing with a mix match set of displays, just be aware that they have different size holes based on if they go on a screw to mount or if they go on a plastic standoff. But hopefully this little experiment helps you out and keeps your games original.